The last couple of weeks we looked at the warfare of the dragon, firstly against the woman, then against the seed of the woman, and we saw how his primary agent, his chief tool that he will use is the beast. And last week we were looking at this beast, and I tried to emphasize last week that in the book of Revelation there are only two beasts. There are not three and there are not four. And that even when we say there are two beasts, we need to qualify it, because the second beast is sometimes referred to as a false prophet. The only one that legitimately has the title, the beast. When you hear the Bible say the beast, it's not a beast or one of the beasts, it's the beast. That beast is Satan's baby, if I may put it that way. Satan's kingdom that he has been using from the beginning of the history of kingdoms, from kingdoms started to be built on this earth after the flood. Satan has been using the primary kingdom on the planet. The greatest kingdom has always been Satan's tool. And so the beast, we said, is one entity spanning all these ages, coming right down to the end of time, but going through different identities or different incarnations. One beast, but with different heads. So that's where we were last week. And today, we're going to move on to the second beast, otherwise called the false prophet. I haven't been so faithful in using charts a lot of the time. We have been looking at the Bible, and I think we're going to be primarily looking at our Bible screen this afternoon as well. I like to do that, to be honest, because if we can avoid, if we look at the Bible, it really, we can get the context on everything more clearly. But I know how helpful images
Are you recording?
Yes, I'm recording. I know how helpful images can be, but I think looking at the Bible itself also is very helpful. So we're actually in Revelation 13, and as I said, we looked at the first beast, or the beast, over the past 2 weeks. Now I think we were just about that down in verse 10. It was the last verse that we should have commented on last week. I don't know if I said much about this, but it says in the King James Version, "He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints." Now I wanted to look at how it is translated in the New American Standard Bible, and probably in most other versions as well. This is what it says: "If anyone is destined for captivity, to captivity he goes. If anyone kills with the sword he must be killed. Here is the perseverance and the faith of the saints." Now this is the New American Standard Bible. I'm going to look at a couple of other versions just so we get a broader view of what is being said. Look at what the New International Version says. "If anyone is to go into captivity they will go. If anyone is to be killed with the sword they will be killed." This calls for patient endurance and faithfulness on the part of God's people. Now, I wanted to look at the three translations we have looked at. And I know this doesn't always tell us the full truth, but I wanted to look at the three translations, and I would ask you, which of these do you think makes the most sense? I have a choice. I have a preference. It's based on what I see in the chapter. In the chapter, I see the beast making war against God's people. He's persecuting, he's wearing out the saints, and there's power that is given him over all kindreds and nations and tongues. And everybody who lives on the earth is worshiping him. And except those whose names are written in the book of life of the Lamb. Then it says, the one who leads into captivity will go into captivity. The one who kills with the sword will be killed with the sword. That's what the King James Version says. But what I see in the NIV seems to me to make more sense. If anyone is to go into captivity they will go. If anyone is to be killed with the sword they will be killed. And the last part just ties everything together. This calls for patient endurance and faithfulness on the part of God's people. It makes perfect sense. Now, am I defending the NIV above the King James Version? No, I'm not doing this. What I am pointing out is that many times you see a translation in the Bible, and it's not that they have translated the words wrongly. Many times you have one word that can have 3 or 4 different meanings. How do you translate it? It depends on the bias of the translator, because the passage can say 1 or 2 or even 3 different things. It depends on how you translate the word. I can give you an example of this. Let me move away from the passage itself for a moment and go over into the book of Daniel to give you an example. All right. I just want to back up what I'm trying to say. In the book of Daniel, if you look at Daniel chapter 8, all right, this verse that we are very familiar with, where it says in verse 14, and he said unto me, unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. All right. In the NIV, it says, he said to me, it will take 2,300 evenings and mornings, and the sanctuary will be reconsecrated. Let me see what the NASB says. He said to me, for 2,300 evenings and mornings, then the holy place will be properly restored. Now this one says restored. The NIV says reconsecrated. And the King James Version says cleansed. 3 different words. Cleansed, restored, reconsecrated. Now, if you actually bring up the Greek rendering, the Hebrew rendering of the word, the Hebrew word has 4 different possible meanings. It can mean cleansed, it can mean justified, it can mean vindicated, and it can mean restored. The one word has 4 different legitimate meanings. What is the meaning? It depends on the context. So if you look at the passage, it says, one saint was speaking, and another saint said unto that certain saint which spake, how long shall be the vision concerning the daily sacrifice, the transgression of desolation, to give both the sanctuary and its host to be trodden underfoot? And I believe the proper answer is found in the NASB, where it says 2,300 evenings and mornings, then the holy place will be properly restored. Now, I'm not going to go into Daniel 8 this evening to show you why restored is the correct word, but I want you to see that the King James Version used the word cleansed. I think that's a wrong translation. The NIV uses the word reconsecrated. I think that's a wrong translation. I think the proper translation is restored. And the reason why I think so is because I'm not a Hebrew scholar, but I understand context. I can read a passage and tell you what it is talking about. And if you read Daniel chapter 8, it's talking about some damage that was done by the little horn. It threw down the sanctuary, it trampled it underfoot, it did damage to the sanctuary and to the cause of God. And what God is saying, at a certain time, the sanctuary or the holy place will be properly restored. That's the meaning. So even though I'm not a Hebrew scholar, context tells me what is the proper word. So why did I go to this? I just wanted you to understand that sometimes when I say, I think this translation has a proper meaning, And it might sound like I'm presumptuous, like I'm taking liberties with the word of God, because I can neither read Greek nor Hebrew. It's not that I'm being presumptuous, brothers and sisters. I'm trying to help us to understand a little better the way how these translations work. Okay? Most of the time, the people who try to put them together, they are honest people. Many scholars, I think the King James Version was translated by 40 different people. All the other versions have multiple people involved. But the problem is that everybody comes with his own bias. And the modern translators have so much bad information, like many of them believe in the rapture, they believe in the Trinity, all kinds of things. So when they are translating, they will look for a word or a thought that supports what they believe. That's why we have to be careful. That's why we have to be careful. I believe that in the old days, there was less baggage that these reformers were carrying with them. And so they were less likely to make those kinds of perverted translations like we have today. But at the same time, I'm not blind to the fact that the King James Version sometimes got it wrong as well. And that's why I look at other translations. All right. I hope that everybody can understand this. So if I say I think this translation gives us the correct interpretation, please understand it's not that I am barefaced and presumptuous. It's because I'm looking at context and I'm understanding why different translations probably have different expressions, different ways they put it. It's because of the way they understand the passage. Now, when you look at this passage in Revelation 13, in light of what is going on, the beast is persecuting God's people. The way the NIV translate verse 10 makes perfect sense. What it is saying is that, look here, some of you are going to go into captivity. It's going to happen. Some of us are going to be killed. It's going to happen. We are going to be killed with the sword. We are going to be violently slain. And it makes sense because it says this calls for patient endurance and faithfulness on the part of God's people. God is telling us what is coming, what is happening, what we are to face. And he's saying, my people, I told you beforehand. So when it happens, be patient and endure. I'm allowing these things to happen, so be patient and you have to endure, because I told you before, if you are going to end up a prisoner, it's going to happen. If you are going to be killed with the sword, you are going to be killed with the sword. Don't be discouraged. I'm reminded of what it says in the previous chapter. They overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, and they did not love their lives unto the death. You know, this morning when Sister Tracy made her comment, you know, she hinted at certain things when she said there's such tumult going on. It's almost like so many of us are being killed off by sickness or something. It's like our fellowship is being gradually wiped out when you look at how many people have died recently. And this statement reminds me to remind her and to remind myself and to remind all of us, we have a Father, and that statement holds true. This calls for patient endurance and faithfulness on the part of God's people. I mean, it's not the same thing. This one is talking about persecution, but the same thing applies to any disaster that comes upon us. Patient endurance and faithfulness on the part of God's people. The time when we need to be most trusting, the time when we need faith most of all, and when we need to be patient and to endure, is when everything seems to go wrong and we don't know what on earth is happening. That's the time when we need faith. If you don't, if everything is going well and you can understand everything, where's the need of faith? Where's the need of faith? It was when Jesus was on the cross and the unexpected was happening and it seemed to be disaster coming upon him. It was then that the Bible says he learned obedience by the things that he suffered. His faith was perfected. His humanity was perfected by that terrible trial of faith. So that's the last statement that is made concerning the beast, or if you prefer, concerning the first beast. Now we go to the second beast. It says, and I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. Now you know that this beast is often represented like a buffalo. I don't have a problem with that because it could have been something like this that John saw, and it's an appropriate symbol because this is a symbol of an American animal. I don't think it's found in this particular form anywhere else on the earth. It has two horns like a lamb. I've never heard a buffalo speak like a dragon, but anyway, it could have been a buffalo. But it's a good symbol of America because I think that this second beast really represents the United States of America, and we're going to look at all the reasons why this is so. But look at what it does first of all. Look at what this beast does. And before I go any further, let me just remind you that everywhere in the prophecies of Daniel and the Revelation, a beast represents a political empire. A political empire. And maybe it will help if I look at my image again. Usually, a kingdom represents only one nation, but an empire represents a nation that has other nations under its dominion. If you look at the beast, when I say the beast, I mean the first one, not this one in particular, but the first beast. And I don't have the image nearby, but otherwise I would show it. But if you look at the beast, every nation represented by the heads was an empire. In other words, each of these was a great kingdom that had other kingdoms under its dominion. All of them. They subjugated and subdued other kingdoms, and they had other kingdoms under them. So they are represented as beasts because a beast is an empire. Now, if it's only one nation or a part of an empire, it's sometimes represented as a horn. So a horn is a lesser kingdom. It's usually a part of a greater kingdom or an empire. So if you go back and look at the different beasts, you'll see that there are many of them have horns on their heads, representing the fact that they had sub-kingdoms under them. So that's interesting because this beast here is said to have two horns, but I'll come back to that in a moment. Let's go back to the Bible. So what does this beast do? Well, all right, even before we come to what the beast does, it says that this beast, I saw another beast coming up out of the earth. All right? Again, it's nice to be looking at an image while we're working. So you would say, what's the difference between this beast and the previous beast? I'm really sorry I don't have the other image up on the screen so we could compare. But you know the first beast, or the beast, came up from the sea. And this other beast in the same chapter, this one is coming up out of the earth. Now, I don't think that, especially in Revelation, things like this are coincidence. I mean, if human beings were designing a puzzle, they will make mistakes because they can forget. God doesn't make mistakes. If God says one comes from the sea, it's because he wants to make a point. And he says one comes from the earth, it's because he wants to make a point. So we should stop and consider, what is the difference between sea and earth? It depends on what sea means. In Revelation 17, let me go there quickly. In Revelation 17, it tells us, most of us probably know, but I like to go and look at the verse. It says, and he said unto me, the waters which thou sawest where the horse sitteth, they are peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues. Here God tells us that waters represent multitudes of people. And if you look at the many places where water is mentioned in Daniel and Revelation, it's consistent. Each time it fits to think of the water as a multitude of people. For example, it says that the great whore in Revelation 17 here is sitting upon many waters. It shows you that the great false religious system is supported by many multitudes of people. Then again, it talks about the river Euphrates that supports um, the river Euphrates that supports Babylon. The water is the vial is poured upon the river Euphrates in Revelation 16, and the water is dried up. The support for Babylon is dried up. In Daniel 7, it says that there are four winds that are fighting upon the great sea. It tells you about warfare among many nations. And so that's how these empires come to power, through warfare. So when you look and you see that this beast comes up out of the earth, God is saying something. He's telling you that this empire did not arise through warfare among the nations. This empire arose not in a place where there was conflict among millions of people, not in a place where there are multitudes and nations and tongues and kings. This empire rose up without that kind of warfare and in a place where there were not multitudes of people. Now, we can divide the world in this way into two parts. The first part of the world, where there were multitudes and nations and tongues and kings, and where the empires arose by warfare, is the biblical world. When I say the biblical world, of course, I mean, let me see, I've got to have some of these images somewhere. Let me see. No, I don't have it. All right. I have a bad chart. All right. I should have brought up something else. But anyway, the biblical world is the old world. As I said, the biblical world is Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. Basically, sometimes mention is made of China. I think in the Bible it is referred to as the land of Sinim. I think India is mentioned. But generally speaking, that's the old world. That's the place of waters, of many waters. There is another part of the world that was not known in the Bible, and an empire arose in this part of the world as powerful, as dominant as any that existed in the old world. And of course, we're talking about what we now refer to as the New World, which is the world that became a part of the historical records. Let me put it that way. I know that, sometimes when you talk about Columbus discovered the West Indies, Columbus discovered a seaway to India and so on, it causes offense because people say, people knew about this. There were people in Africa and other places who knew these things long before Columbus. But let us face the fact that the world has developed into a place where our knowledge and our culture and our environment is based on what is popular and public knowledge. The primitive people who lived back in those years, they never left the records of history that we have today. And so, as far as the modern world is concerned, their explorations are basically lost in the annals of time. So we're talking about the world as we know it, okay? In the world as we know it, the Americas, North and South America, Australia, the Caribbean, most of the southern hemisphere was unknown to the biblical world. It was another complete world, but it was unknown to the biblical world. So, in this part of the world, there is one power that has arisen, which is more dominant than any other nation in our part of the world. Maybe more dominant than any nation in the other part of the world as well. But if we talk about our part of the world, if we just go by that one criterion alone, there's no question that this empire-like beast has to be America. I mean, in particular, the United States of America. Now, it's an enigma that the beast has two horns, and we have said that, and usually, or sometimes, a horn represents a sub-kingdom within an empire. As far as we know, the United States is only one country. Well, I mean, you have a few little sub countries, like you have Puerto Rico, which is a satellite of America. You have Guam. You have one or two other small islands that come under American government. But we don't have several small horns. We have two horns and only two. And as far as we know, America is one country. So if there were 52 horns or 50 something horns, we could say that these represent the states of America. But there are only two horns. So we are at a kind of difficulty to establish what are these two horns. Now, at the same time, there is so much more that identifies this as America that I would not consider that a major difficulty. But I'm going to suggest something anyway. My suggestion may be way out. I'm not going to put much weight on it because I don't like to sit down on something that is a little shaky, but I'm going to suggest it anyway. The two most dominant entities in the Americas, I would say, are the United States and Canada. These two countries are so similar in their outlook, in their friendship. They are a part of the same landmass, and their policies are so similar that they almost form a part of one country. Now, I've heard it said that the two horns represent the two principles on which America is built. You know, religious liberty and political liberty. Some say republicanism, and the other side, democracy. Now, the reason why I hesitate is because I like consistency. And if in the past a horn has represented a sub-kingdom, a minor kingdom, a lesser kingdom, I don't want to break that and give it a different meaning. Maybe I'm wrong, and if somebody can give me a good reason why we could break that principle, fine. But for myself, I am reluctant to say it represents, two forms of government within one empire, because that's not what it has meant in the past. In the past, it has meant a sub-kingdom within an empire. So I'm reluctant to go there. So that is one area of caution in what we are looking at. But as I said, there is so much more as to make it almost unmistakable that I'm still going with the idea that this power, this second beast, which is called a false prophet, is the United States of America. Now, it says furthermore, it says he comes up out of the earth, but it says he had two horns like a lamb. We just commented on that. And he spake as a dragon. Now, the only dragon in the book of Revelation is Satan. There's no other dragon mentioned anywhere else. So what God is saying here is that this beast, something interesting, I just looked at something. It says he had two horns. It doesn't say he had two horns. It says he had two horns like a lamb. Okay? This beast has been referred to as a lamb-like beast. And there must be a reason why God specifies, or John specifies, what God makes John see, that it's not just two horns, but these two horns give the beast a lamb-like appearance. Two horns like a lamb. And as a matter of fact, that maybe these buffalo horns may be misleading, because I don't think they look like lamb horns. But anyway, I think God is saying something about these horns and their misleading their misleading nature. These horns mislead people as far as the nature of this beast is concerned. It is when he opens his mouth that you get the true status of this beast. Now, it says he speaks as a dragon, and I'm sure most of us will remember where Jesus says, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaketh. So I would suggest that the true nature of this beast is heard when it begins to speak. And what it shows is that it has a dragon's heart. It has an appearance, when you look at it, it looks like a lamb. But when it begins to speak, you see that the heart is the heart of a dragon. Now again, I believe that God is showing us the true nature of the underlying principles behind America. All right. So most people will interpret this, or some people will interpret this to mean that once America was like a lamb, but then later on it begins to speak like a dragon. To be honest, the prophecy does not present it in this way. The prophecy says that it looks like a lamb, and in the same breath he's speaking. But when he speaks, you hear the voice of a dragon. In other words, it would be better to say that this is a two-faced beast. It's not the beast moves from being a lamb to being a dragon. It's the same beast with two different faces. It depends on which face you are looking at. And for me, I know there are a lot of Americans who will agree with me. In this room, all of us are interested in truth and not in politics or in nationalism. But I know that most people will agree that this is what we see when we look at America. If we look at America from one angle, we see everything that is attractive and appealing, and it's one of the reasons why people from every country on the planet would like to go and live in America. They find so much appealing about America. It looks like a lamb. It looks like a place. It looks like a place where you can have the freedom to do what you want, to become rich if you want, to get away from dictatorship, and they say you can make life there. But from another angle, when you begin to listen to the things that are being said by America, the pronouncements that are being made, and the way, from another angle, how she walks across the world, you begin to see that in the heart of the system, now I'm not talking about the people. I know the truth that some of the best people in the world come from America. But the system itself that governs a country, it is based in dragon principles. It says he speaks as a dragon. And as time progresses, we see this developing more and more. What is happening in America today, as a matter of fact, in the whole world, it's really the outworking of fundamental principles that exist. Like Jesus says, from within, out of the heart of men proceed evil thoughts, adulteries, murders, fornications. It's not that this man is better than that man. Both of them have the same evil heart, but it shows up more in one than the other. That's the real problem with the sons of Adam. Wickedness shows up more in one than the other, but both of them have the same root inside of them. And it's true with America or Russia or Ukraine or Israel or Palestine or Gaza or China or North Korea. Every one of them has the same basic heart. It's just that circumstances cause one to go further in darkness than the other. But the principle is there. And the evolution of the two-horned beast is an example to us, and I believe to the universe, that no matter where you start, if you build on carnal principles, the end result will be that you end up as a murderer and a destroyer of those who stand by the truth. It doesn't matter which country. The country that was regarded as the best in the world will end up being a tool in the hand of the dragon. Now, the first beast, of course, was the pioneer in it, But the second beast now follows along. And it goes on to say in verse 12, and he exercised all the power of the first beast before him. Now, what does this mean? All right, I think the word power, let me see if the word is dunamis or exousia, and I'll explain what I mean, trying to pretend that I'm a Greek scholar. Power, it's from the word exousia. All right, there's a reason why I go to that, because exousia means authority, all right? It doesn't really mean power. In English, we have two different words, and so do they in Greek. But for some reason, I mean, okay, if you look at the NIV, it says authority. You don't have to be a Greek scholar at all. You just need several translations. NASB says authority, right? King James Version says power. In the good old days of King James, power, authority, and power were so closely associated that they made no distinction. So it means that he exercises the same authority as the first beast. So it doesn't mean he exercises atomic power and soldiers and guns and warfare. It means authority. In other words, he has the authority to command, and people carry out the commands, just like the first beast was doing. So he carries the same authority. And I believe that America is exercising that authority, first of all, in the New World, while the first beast exercises that authority in the Old World. Both of them are working together. Now it says he exercises before him. He carries out the authority before him. And what it says in the NASB, it means he does it in his presence. Right? So what it means is that it is saying it's not that the first beast carries on, then he disappears, and the second beast comes along and carries on. No. The second beast starts to carry on while the first beast is still there. While the first beast is doing his thing, the second beast comes along and starts doing it as well. So he does it before him or in his presence. So this tells us that both beasts are dominant at the same time, down at the end of time. One is doing his thing in the old world, the place of water, and one is doing his thing primarily in the new world, in the place of the earth. And it says, and he caused the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast whose deadly wound was healed. Now, when he says he caused the earth, does he mean the planet, the entire planet, or does he mean the people in our part of the world? Well, to be honest, knowing what happens, I'm tempted to say it means the entire planet. But because I like to be consistent, I'm tempted to say it is referring to the new world, to our part of the world, which would lead us to the conclusion that the beast, the first beast, deals with the old world, and the second beast deals with the new world. One takes care of the area of the sea, the other one takes care of the area of the earth. So maybe that is the primary meaning. Whatever the meaning, I don't think it matters too much. But I would like to be consistent, and so I'm going to say that it means that this beast is drawing worship to the first beast. It's inviting the people under his domain to worship the first beast. Now, the first beast takes care of the people in his territory. And this second beast, or the false prophet, takes care of the people in his territory. But the people in his territory, he's not demanding worship for himself. He's pointing them to the first beast. He wants them to worship the first beast, the one whose deadly wound was healed. And again, I want you to notice God identifies him as the one whose deadly wound was healed. And this is suggesting that it is in the time of the healing of the deadly wound, the one whose deadly wound was healed. It is It is in this age when the second beast is doing his thing. It's in this age that the first beast has had his deadly wound healed. So because it's identified as a primary mark of the first beast, his deadly wound was healed. He has come back to dominance, and so he's identified as the one whose wound was healed. So I just want to comment on this word worship. Now, because the word worship is used, a lot of people jump to the conclusion that we are dealing with religious powers. You know, they say that the first beast is the papacy, and the second beast is apostate Protestantism. You know that belief? Now, I have thrown that out because I find that a beast does not represent a religious power, it represents a political power. That and several other reasons. But anyway, that is one. So I believe when it says worship here, I don't think it means worship in the way that religions worship. And I'm going to show you an example in the Bible where worship is used. Let me see if I can find it here. I'm badly organized this evening, but let me see. All right, yes, here's a verse in First Chronicles 29 and verse 20. And David said to all the congregation, "Now bless the Lord your God." And all the congregation blessed the Lord God of their fathers, and bowed their heads, and worshipped the Lord and the king. Okay, that's interesting. But that is the Old Testament concept of worship. Now, today, when we talk about worship, we think of adoring somebody as God. We think of worship as being exclusively to God. But if you, in the days of the King James Version, and evidently in the days of the Bible too, when it says they worship somebody, it did not necessarily mean worship in the way we worship God. Because see, here are a set of people who are worshiping Yahweh, they're worshiping the true God. It says they bowed their heads and they worship the Lord and the king. They worship the king as well. In the old days, and it still happens today, especially in a legal setting, sometimes the judge is referred to as your worship, or probably it's the mayor. Some are referred to as your lordship. And your honor, your lordship, your worship, they refer to the mayor as. In today's terminology, that's blasphemous, in my opinion. But in the language of the King James and of the Bible times, worship did not necessarily mean you are acknowledging somebody to be God. It simply means that you are giving great respect. You are revering the person. You are giving great respect. You are submitting to the person. So this is what we do to God. But it's also done to human beings who are in certain positions of authority. They are worshipped in that sense without being acknowledged as God, not in the sense as God is worshipped. And so we see this here in the Old Testament. So if you go back to Revelation here, where it says it caused the people to worship. If anybody believes that the time is coming when people are going to bow down and pray to the beast and acknowledge the beast as God, literally, I think you're wrong. I think you're going to be surprised because I don't think that will ever happen. But the Bible says they worship the first beast, and it means that they give their utmost loyalty. They submit to the beast. They accept the beast as an authority whose guidance is to be carried out. So, who do they worship? It's the first beast. It's the first beast. The second beast, he begins to exercise the same authority like the first beast. And what does he use his authority to do? He uses his authority to cause the earth and the people who live in it to pay attention to the first beast, to submit to the first beast, and to give their loyalty to the first beast. How do you do this? Is it just something you do in your head? Do you say, I worship this person because he says two and two make four, and I agree in my head? No. What it means is that the first beast has implemented something questionable, something that requires a show of loyalty, something requiring a show of loyalty, something requiring your vote to say that you believe in the beast. Now, the second beast comes along and he uses his authority to get the people who dwell on earth to worship the first beast by acknowledging that authority, by acknowledging that wisdom, by acknowledging that statement from the first beast. This is what we are seeing as we are reading through here. Now, the next two verses, they are tricky verses, and I'm going to be careful in what I'm going to say, because it's possible that there are people to whom this will be a new idea and it may seem offensive to you. But let me go ahead anyway. Now it says, he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. And he deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast which had a wound by a sword, and did live. I have to admit that sometimes the way I interpret things in the book of Revelation are a little bit different from how other people see them. But my approach to interpreting it is based on looking at the different passages over many years and trying to see what makes consistent sense, and then trying to apply the principle in a consistent way. Now let me explain why I'm going through all of this to say all of that. Now it is believed, it says clearly, he makes fire come down from heaven on the earth. He does miracles in the sight of the beast. Now, miracles are the realm of religion. Making fire come down from heaven was the work of Elijah the prophet. Nobody ever did that except Elijah. So if we are talking about these real miracles, if these are really miracles, then we are in the realm of some religious power. Miracles are the realm of religion. And when you see fire, literal fire, somebody calling down fire from heaven on the earth, instantly you think of Elijah. Now let me show you another place where it mentions something similar. See if I can make my point. All right, give me a second. Let me unlink these two. All right, so if you go to Revelation 11, it talks about God's two witnesses. It says, if any man will hurt them, fire proceedeth out of their mouth and devour their enemies. And if any man will hurt them, he must in this manner be killed. Do you believe that the two witnesses, we know it's the Spirit of God and the Word of God working through God's people, do you believe that these people are going to send fire out of their mouth to destroy their enemies? Is there anybody in this room who believes that that is literal? I'm pretty sure that everybody will say, no, it's not literal. God is using this imagery. God is using this imagery to point us to the work of two men in the Bible, Moses and Elijah, right? It says they have power to shut heaven that it does not rain in the days of their prophecy. You get a graphic description of something that happens. And instead of looking at the details and saying this will literally happen, what you look at is, what is the message behind this? You get an image, but you know the image is not really how it is going to be. But what is the message behind the imagery? That's a question you ask. So it's not that God's people are going to send fire out of their mouth to devour their enemies. That certainly won't happen. We will not hurt our enemies. But God wants our mind to go back to Elijah and Moses. And so he gives us descriptions from Moses and Elijah. Let me show you another example. If you go to Revelation 14, it says, if any man worship, in verses 9 to 12, if any man worship the beast and his image and receive his mark, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, and so on. It says, and he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment ascendeth up forever and ever, and they have no rest day nor night. Do you believe that this will literally happen? And again, I expect everybody will say, no, it won't literally happen. So why does God use this language? Because God wants to point us to a place where it actually happened. The description is making us look at Sodom. It is not saying God is going to roast people with fire and brimstone and the smoke of their torment will go up and they will never get any rest. No, there's no such thing as an eternal burning hell. But God uses the language because he wants us to think of a particular city. So God is saying Sodom. And in the previous passage we looked at, God is saying Moses and Elijah. So it would make sense that when we come to Revelation 13 here, where it talks about the false prophet calling down fire from heaven on the earth, we should apply the same principle. He does miracles in the sight of the beast and tells people that they are to worship the beast. So if we are dealing with a secular power, a secular kingdom, if we are dealing with America, for example, which I believe we are dealing with, does America perform miracles? Not that I know of. I don't know that the nation of America or the government of America has ever performed any literal miracles like calling down fire from heaven on the earth, and so on. And I don't believe that America will ever do this. Furthermore, if any religious person in America, like Benny Hinn or Kenneth Copeland or any of them, ever call down fire from heaven, I will still not believe it is a fulfillment of the prophecy, because I want to follow consistent principles in how I'm looking at the scriptures. So what do I understand then? I understand that this is saying that this second beast will do some things that are so striking, that are so outstanding. They will have the power to convince people to make this image to the beast. It will deceive people. It will do some things that in the secular realm are similar to miracles. All right. So what's the purpose of the miracles? It's to convince people. So if America is able to do things to convince people, whatever America is doing to convince people to follow in the way of Europe, in the way of the first beast, whatever America is doing that is striking people, that is making people believe, this is what we would categorize as miracles. So we are looking at the principle behind the miracles, not the literal miracles themselves. And I hope everybody can understand what I'm saying. So what are we talking about? Well, it's a very delicate thing, and I have to be careful about what I'm saying. I have to speak in kind of parables that all of you can understand, okay? Because this is going to be posted on public media, and whatever you say can be an excuse for people to take down the video, the powers that be. So anyway, what I'm saying is that America will do certain things in the world that will make the people follow what America says. Now you can think of the different things. I'm not going to name any. You can think of acts of warfare. You can think of acts of deception. You can think of actions of controlling the population and compelling the population by some means to do whatever it wants to be done. These would constitute the miracles that make people follow what America says. There are many people who are deceived by statements from the politicians, but there are many others who are deceived by America's ability to do certain things, how America does certain things. This amazes people, and so they are ready to do whatever America says. And I think this has special application to the people who live in the New World, and especially in America. Now, in the sight of the beast. It means that while the beast is still alive and while he's still carrying on his depredations, that is when America comes into the picture and starts to persuade everybody to follow the beast. Okay. Now I see that some of us are putting some suggestions in the chat. That is fine. No problem. That won't be published on YouTube. But I'm leaving some things to the imagination. All right. So the people on earth are deceived and they are told that they should make an image to the beast. Now, what is this? What is this image to the beast? Where do they build this image? They build this image on the earth, right? And again, if we are consistent, which is what I'm trying to be, the earth means the new world, and particularly America, particular the United States. So the people of America are told that they are to build a system that looks like what Europe has been for thousands of years. They want a system like Europe. Now, a friend of mine ridiculed me when I said something like this, and he said, America is not following Europe. Europe is following America. He says this interpretation is ridiculous. So, because America is not following Europe. But I would say specifically, whatever the mark of the beast is, and we will come to that, whatever the mark of the beast is, Europe is the leader because it's the mark of the beast and Europe is the beast. We will come to that. So when it says America is telling the people that they must make an image to the beast, what America does, America persuades the people who live in America to set up a political system that looks like the beast system. Most of you in the room, you understand America's political system better than I do. I've heard people say democracy is not really freedom. They say democracy is not the rule of the people. They say America is going towards socialism, all kinds of things. I don't know much about political systems, so I don't know. But I will tell you that what the prophecy says is that the same kind of persecuting, intolerant system that was the hallmark of Europe over the ages is going to be the hallmark of the image when it is set up in America. And I think everybody can agree with me on that. America is to set up a system which does not tolerate freedom of thought, freedom of speech, freedom of expression. America is to do this, and this will be particularly manifested in its demand that everybody should receive the mark of the beast. So that is the point of this. So the image to the beast is a system that mirrors what prevailed in the Roman beast, in that old world beast. The system that prevailed, the intolerance, the persecution of God's people, this will be mirrored in America. That's what this prophecy means. And America will use deceptive means to startle people into agreeing with setting up this system. You know, in a recent situation in America, people were saying it's okay if we lose our freedom as long as we are safe. I just use that as a little example for us to think about. It looks impossible that anybody could deceive the people in the land of the free and the home of the brave, where freedom, they cut their eye teeth on the idea of liberty. It seems ridiculous, but if we remember a short while ago, that the vast majority of people were willing to persecute the minority, were willing to set up a system draconian and uncompromising, persecuting simply because people were persuaded that this was good for their safety. They never had the sense or the tools or the perception to know what was good for them. They were deceived as easily as a baby is deceived by a false sweetie. As easy as that.